I always thought our farm was unshakable. The old red barn, the white fences running across the fields, the smell of cut hay drifting in with the summer breeze, it all felt timeless. My grandfather built this place with his bare hands, my father expanded it, and now it was my turn to keep it alive. Every morning, as the sun lit the golden rows of corn, I felt a pride I couldn't put into words.
We were more than a family living on land, we were part of its history. The porch held our laughter, the fields held our sweat, and the kitchen table held every memory worth keeping. At least, that's what I believed.
Until the day the envelope came.
It was late afternoon, the sky still burning orange. I was going through the mail in the kitchen, just another pile of bills and catalogues, but one thick envelope stamped with the bank's seal made my stomach turn. I tore it open expecting another statement. Instead, my eyes froze on a number so large it didn't seem real. 6 figures, debt in my family's name. For a moment the room spun, my hands trembled, the paper crinkled between my fingers. This wasn't possible. Not here, not on this land that had always stood for stability. I called everyone into the kitchen, my mother, my wife, my siblings, and my cousin. The cousin who'd been helping with the books these last few years. We all crowded around that table, under the dim light, the envelope lying open, like a wound no one wanted to touch. "What the hell is this?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. My cousin's face went pale. He swallowed, hard eyes darting to the floor. I took out a loan to keep us afloat last season. The drought, the equipment. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. The words hit like a hammer.
You thought my brother barked, slamming his fist on the table. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. My wife just stared at me, her eyes wide, searching for something in my face. Maybe an explanation, maybe a miracle.
But all I had was shame. "You should have told me," I whispered, my throat dry. "We're family. You don't hide something like this. Not here. Not with our land." The air grew heavy, suffocating. Voices rose, accusations flew across the table. My brother blamed my cousin for betrayal. My cousin begged for understanding. My mother begged for peace. But the more we spoke, the more everything broke.
And I just sat there staring at that paper, at the mountain of debt that now defined us. The proud stone farm reduced to numbers in a bank ledger.
For the first time in my life, I felt small, humiliated. Like everything I thought I was holding together had already slipped through my hands. The days after that night felt colder, even though summer still burned outside. Inside the house, silence spread like a disease. No more laughter in the kitchen, no more clinking of glasses at dinner. Just the sound of doors closing, and hearts closing too. I tried to keep us together. I called for another meeting, hoping we could talk calmly. But the moment I laid the papers on the table again, it was like striking a match in a dry field. My aunt shook her head, her voice trembling. "We can't survive this. We have to sell part of the land. It's the only way." Her words cut me deeper than she knew. Sell the land, the very soil that held my father's sweat, my grandfather's legacy. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. My brother stood up, shoving his chair back. "You knew, didn't you?" he shouted at my cousin. "You planned this, dragged us all down with you."
I didn't plan anything, my cousin yelled back, his eyes red. I was trying to save us, I thought.
"You thought wrong," my brother snapped. "Now we all pay for your mistake." The argument spiraled. Voices overlapped, tears mixed with rage. My mother begged them to stop, but no one listened. Even my wife, usually the calm in every storm, sat frozen, her hand gripping her wedding ring like it was the only solid thing left. Then came the breaking point. My younger brother, the one who always looked up to me, grabbed his jacket. His eyes burned with frustration.
"I can't stay here," he said flatly. "This house, this farm, it's poison now. Don't you dare walk away," I told him, my voice cracking.
But he did. He slammed the door so hard the frame shook, and moments later the sound of his truck faded into the night. The silence that followed was unbearable. I looked around the room, my family scattered in spirit even if they were still in the same house. My cousin avoided my eyes, my aunt muttered about selling. My wife turned her face away. I walked out to the porch, leaning on the old wooden railing. The night air was heavy, the crickets loud in the fields. And for the first time, I wondered if the land I loved so much was worth the family it was tearing apart.
Maybe losing dirt was better than losing blood, but right then it felt like we were losing both.
The farm didn't collapse overnight, but it felt like it. One week I was making plans for harvest. The next, every door I knocked on was closing in my face. I went to the supply store in town, the same one my father had done business with for 30 years. The owner, a man I'd known since I was a boy, shook his head before I even opened my mouth. "I'm sorry, Adam. No more credit. Not until the debt's settled." His words stung worse than a slap. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust. Trust that had carried us through droughts, floods, even war. Gone in a single letter from the bank. The news spread fast, too fast. Neighbors whispered. Church folks looked away when I passed. Some tried to act kind, but their pity was sharper than their silence. I could see it in their eyes. The stones aren't what they used to be. And inside the farm, things only got heavier. The tractors broke down more often. The barn roof leaked after the first autumn storm. Calves fell sick, and I didn't have the money to call the vet right away. I patched, I mended, I worked until my hands bled. But no matter how hard I pushed, the cracks kept spreading. Then came the notice from the bank. A foreclosure date, printed in bold letters like a death sentence. I read it under the dim light in the kitchen while the rest of the family slept. My chest tightened, my hands shook so bad I dropped the paper. I picked it up again just to make sure it was real. It was too real. I tried to keep strong in front of my wife and kids, but at night, when the house went quiet, I broke. I'd sit alone in the hayloft, staring at the rafters, asking myself where I went wrong. Was I blind? Did I miss the signs? Or was I just too proud to see it coming? The worst part wasn't the debt. It was the distance. My younger brother still hadn't come home. My mother avoided my eyes at the dinner table. And my cousin, the one who caused it all, walked around like a shadow, silent, carrying guilt that didn't fix a thing.
I hated him. I hated myself. I hated that I couldn't tell the difference anymore.
One night a storm rolled in. Rain hammered the roof, wind howled through the trees. I sat by the window watching the fields drown in darkness. Every flash of lightning lit up the barn, standing crooked and tired, like it was about to give up. And in that moment, I felt the same. For the first time in my life, I thought maybe this is how it ends. Not with a fight, not with pride, but with silence, shame, and an auctioneer's hammer. It was a Sunday evening, heavy and still. The storm had rolled past that afternoon, leaving puddles along the dirt road, and the smell of wet hay hanging in the air. I sat on the porch, elbows digging into my knees, staring at the fields that stretched into the dark. The boards under me felt colder than usual, and for the first time in my life, this porch, my father's porch, my grandfather's porch, didn't feel like home. I didn't hear him at first. My boy, 15 years old, growing taller every month, but still with that look of a child who carries too much on his shoulders. He pushed the screen door open quiet and walked out with a kind of carefulness, like he didn't want to break me by stepping too hard. He sat down beside me, no words, just the sound of the wood creaking under our weight. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The cicadas screamed in the distance, and the last orange line of the sunset bled into purple. Finally, he broke the silence. "Dad." "Are we going to lose it?" The words hit me like a fist to the gut. I wanted to be strong, to smile and say no, that everything would be fine, that the farm, the land, the barns, the fences would stand as it always had. But the lie stuck in my throat.
I don't know, son, I said, my voice rough. I just don't know anymore.
He nodded like he'd been expecting that answer all along. His eyes stayed on the horizon, on the fields, like he was seeing them for the last time. Then in a voice softer than the wind, he said, "You know, I don't need this farm to be happy."
I turned to him, stunned. What do you mean?
He picked at the chipped paint on the railing, his words slow but certain. "I just need you, Dad, and Mom, and everyone, together. That's all. I don't care if we live here or in town or in some small place with no land at all. I don't care about fields or barns. I care about us."
I felt my chest tighten. For months I had been breaking myself apart, fighting to keep every acre, every fence post, every roof tile, and here was my son telling me the one truth I had forgotten, that the land wasn't the heart of it. We were.
He turned his face toward me, then eyes shining even in the dim light. "Dad, don't lose us trying to save dirt." The words split me open. I wanted to hold them, to frame them, to carve them into the walls of this house so I would never forget. My hands trembled, so I gripped them together, knuckles white. My breath came slow, uneven.
I hear you, I whispered, my throat raw. God, I hear you.
We sat there, just the two of us, under the flickering porch light. The moths circled the glow, the air cooled as night settled in. And for the first time in months, the weight on my shoulders didn't feel like it was crushing me. That night, when I finally lay down, I kept replaying his words. "Don't lose us trying to save dirt." I stared at the ceiling, listening to the steady breath of my wife beside me, and I realized something that should have been obvious all along. The farm wasn't the foundation, the family was. And maybe, just maybe, if I held on to them, we could find a way to hold on to both. The morning after my boy's words, I woke with something I hadn't felt in months. Resolve. Not the kind that comes from pride or stubbornness, but the kind that comes when you realize you're not fighting for land anymore. You're fighting for people. For family. I started small. A notebook, a pen, a kitchen table covered in bills. I wrote everything down, every dollar, owed every deadline, every asset we had left. It looked impossible on paper, but at least now it was clear. No more secrets. No more shadows. I called a family meeting. The same table that had held shouting and blame now held silence, but a different kind. My cousin sat across from me, shoulders bent, guilt written all over his face. My mother stared at her hands. My wife kept her eyes on me, waiting. "This is what we owe," I said, sliding the notebook forward. "This is what we have, and this is what we're going to do." For the first time since the storm began, no one argued. They just listened. We went to see a lawyer in town, a man with grey hair and a kind voice who had seen too many families like ours. He explained the difference between secured debt and unsecured, told us what the bank could really take and what they couldn't. Knowledge felt like oxygen. We finally knew the rules of the fight. Rules. Then came the bank. I walked into that office with my cousin by my side. His hands shook, but I told him to keep his head up. We sat across from a man in a suit who looked at us like numbers, not people. Still I spoke. "We're not running," I said. "We're not hiding. We're here to work out a way forward." He didn't smile, didn't soften, but he listened. We left with a temporary agreement, more time in exchange for strict payments. It wasn't much, but it was something. A sliver of ground beneath our feet. Next came the community. I swallowed my pride and walked into the church basement one evening where neighbors gathered for the weekly supper. The room went quiet when I stood. I cleared my throat, my palms sweating.
"Most of you already know what we're facing," I began. "The farm's in trouble, but I'm not here for pity. I'm here to ask if you'll stand with us like we've stood with you."
For a moment, silence. Then a hand went up. Old Mr. Jenkins offered to lend his tractor during harvest. Mrs. Green said she'd bring her boys to help mend fences. One by one, voices rose. Offers of labor tools, even small donations. It wasn't charity, it was community. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight start to lift. Back home, we started cutting costs. We sold off an old baler, pooled money into a single fund, planted crops that would sell faster at market. My wife started baking pies to sell at the roadside stand. My cousin, eager to prove himself, worked from dawn until midnight, fixing everything he could. And we began something new. A ledger kept in the open on the kitchen counter. Every expense, every dollar earned, written down for all to see. No more secrets. No more hidden debts. At night, we sat together again, not in anger, but in planning. My mother, once quiet and broken, offered recipes for the stand. My younger brother, after weeks away, returned with a stiff apology and stronger hands ready to work. The farm wasn't fixed. The debt still loomed. But the family, my family, was finding its footing again. One evening, after a long day mending fences, I looked across the yard. My cousin was hauling wood. My son was painting the gate. My wife was hanging clothes to dry, humming a tune. For the first time in a long time, the farm felt alive again. We weren't out of the woods, not by a long shot. But we were walking together step by step. And that, I realized, was the only way we'd ever make it. Healing didn't come like thunder. It came in small drops, slow, almost too quiet to notice. But it came. The first step was at the table. For months, that kitchen table had been a place of silence or shouting. But one evening, my wife set it as if nothing had ever broken. A roast sat, steaming in the center, fresh bread on the side, a candle flickering soft light across tired faces. We all gathered awkward at first. My cousin sat hunched, his eyes on his plate. My younger brother shifted in his chair, still carrying the weight of old anger. My mother folded her hands, whispering grace under her breath. The kids fidgeted, unsure if laughter was safe here anymore. At first, the only sound was cutlery scraping plates. Then slowly, words returned. My son asked about the calves. My mother shared a story about how my father used to fix fences with nothing but twine and faith. My wife cracked a small smile. The laughter wasn't back yet, but the silence had cracked. The next step came outside. I was hammering posts for a new fence line when my cousin walked over, a bucket of nails in hand. He stood there for a moment looking at me, then down at the ground. "I'm sorry," he said, voice shaking. "I don't expect forgiveness. But I'll keep working, every day, until we're right again." I looked at him, sweat dripping down my back, the weight of months pressing between us. I was angry, I admitted. Angry at you, angry at myself. Maybe more at myself. But anger won't fix this fence. So pick up that hammer. And he did. We worked side by side in silence, each strike echoing like a promise. Then the community came. Neighbors showed up with tools, with strong backs, with quiet encouragement. Old Mr. Jenkins drove his tractor into our yard one morning, grinning under his hat. "Heard you needed a hand," he said. 2 boys from church helped haul hay. Mrs. Green brought pies, setting them on the porch with a smile that said, "You're not alone." It was humbling. For months I had carried shame like a weight chained to my chest. But standing there watching neighbors mend our barn roof, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: lightness. Not because the debt was gone, not because the farm was safe, but because we weren't carrying it alone anymore. One evening, I walked into the kitchen. The ledger was on the counter, open pages neat with every expense, every dollar earned. My wife looked up at me, her eyes softer than they had been in months. My cousin across the room gave a small nod. No secrets, no lies, just honesty, fragile but real. That night, we gathered again at the table. My younger brother had returned sheepish, but he passed the bread to my son, like nothing had ever been broken. My mother laughed at a small joke. My cousin smiled hesitant, but genuine. And I sat back, watching them, a warmth spreading through me I thought I'd lost forever. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't one big moment. It's a choice you make over and over. In the fields, at the table, in the quiet of the night, the debt still loomed. The future was still uncertain. But as I looked around that table, I knew something for sure: our family was healing. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to carry us through. Harvest came late that year. The fields were smaller, the yields lighter, but to me it felt like the richest season of my life. The morning of the harvest, I stood at the edge of the cornfield, the sun rising slow over the hills. The air smelled of earth and dew, and for the first time in months I felt peace instead of dread. My family gathered behind me, my wife with her steady smile, my mother with her hands folded my sons, laughing as they chased each other along the rows, even my cousin standing quietly, ready to work. We started together. Scythes swung baskets, filled laughter mixed with sweat. The work was hard, but there was joy in it, joy I thought I'd never feel again. At one point I paused, leaning on my tool, and just listened. The sound of voices, of unity, of family. It was better than music. Neighbors came by too. Some brought food, others just hands willing to help. Old Mr. Jenkins parked his tractor by the fence and joined in. The boys from church hauled baskets. Mrs. Green arrived with a basket of pies, same as she had before, smiling at my wife like sisters. It wasn't just our harvest, it was everyone's. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, we gathered in the yard. A long table stretched under the old oak tree, covered in food, roast bread, fresh vegetables, pies that smelled like heaven. Lanterns hung from the branches, casting a warm glow. We sat together side by side. My younger brother, who had once stormed out, raised a glass and said to family. My cousin, voice trembling, added, and to second chances. I looked at them all, my wife, my children, my mother, my brother, my cousin, and felt a lump rise in my throat. For months I had feared this family was gone forever. And yet here we were, laughing, eating whole again.
As night settled, I caught my son's gaze. He grinned wide and proud. "We did it, Dad."
I nodded, unable to speak. My eyes drifted to the farmhouse, where a picture of my grandfather still hung above the mantel. For a moment I could almost hear his voice telling me what I had finally learned. Land can be lost and won. Money can come and go. But family, when you choose it, when you fight for it, when you forgive for it, family stays. And in that moment, under the lantern light, surrounded by the people I loved, I knew the truth. We hadn't just saved the farm. We had saved each other.